All
right.
Capri, do you know where the wave your hand feature is?
I think you have to go to the chat.
She's right. You do. You got to go to participants or to chat. Oh, wait, where's the chat?
I have chat, but I don't see. Oh, do you click on it?
Yeah.
And then I don't know how to do the hand.
There we go. So this mastermind is about pricing properties. I try to always bring a mastermind that's relevant to what's going on in the marketplace. And right now we are seeing crazy prices in South Jersey, suburban Pennsylvania, limited inventory. So a lot of the questions come, and this is why it's good to have somebody from the Center City, Philadelphia area where appreciation of prices was always common for many years. Shooting for the stars and pricing in Philly is a common practice. So this is going to be beyond the, hey, I got 3 comparable sales and that's how I price my property. It's not so simple. And that's why we have a panel here to kind of get how they go about doing things. It's not to say that they can't talk about comparable sales, but we're going to dive into a few specific questions. And for now, we're going to start, and I have to go back and look and see. Does anybody remember who I started off with? Oh, we're going to start off with Bonnie introducing herself and who she is.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Bonnie. I'm with RE/MAX ONE. I think quickly, a couple of my greatest accomplishments would be 1, being instrumental in selling the company to John Benson. That would stand out really on the top of my list. And being an equal in listing and selling for over, let's just say, a lot of years. And everything being referrals. That's the base of my business, and take a lot of pride in that.
Thank you. And next on our panel is John Swartz.
I'm John Swartz with RE/MAX Community. I've been in the RE/MAX system for 19 years now. I've done commercial, residential, REO, and pretty much I've come across pretty much every scenario. I've sold over 3,000 homes, and just been here. I've been experienced, and like I said, been in all types of transactions: land, residential, resale, again, commercial, investors, and I work with all types of clients and referrals as well.
Thank you, John. And up next is Capri.
Hi, I'm Capri. I've been with RE/MAX, I think this January will be like 14 years, with John, really. And so my team was a team of 5, was able to hit Titan by the skin of our teeth last year, and it looks like we'll do it again this year. So that's really exciting. And I never really did listings before, or I hated them. And it was because I wasn't pricing them right. This past 2 years, that was something I'll talk about, is, changing my pricing strategy and now doing a lot of listings.
Excellent. And finally, Nancy J. Anderson from the Nancy J. Anderson Group. Nancy, you're muted, so unmute you.
Okay, hi, I'm Nancy, and I love my job. I've been in real estate for over 30 years, and I've been with RE/MAX for 16 years. I'm referral based. I love all my clients, and I stay in touch with them, and they give me lots of referrals. The total amount of houses I sold all by myself in 1 year with no help was 69, which was pretty good. I work primarily with first-time home buyers. I started my own team in 2020, and I sell 50% listings, 50% sales. And I love working with RE/MAX, and I love everybody I work with. You guys are great.
John, you're muted.
Thank you, Capri. Well, thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everybody, for giving a brief description of yourselves. We're going to get right in. We have 5 scripted questions for the panel. The first round is going to go to each panel member to answer, and then they're going to, from the other 4 questions, they're going to raise their hand, and take a stab at answering it. And then when we're done, then we're going to leave it open to all of the attendees to ask any questions they have. So we'll get started. And this is being recorded, everyone, so we can put it on our YouTube channel. Okay. So the first question is, you've been called by a seller for a listing appointment. What are your first steps or processes to determine price and or value? And we'll start with Nancy.
Okay. The first thing I do is I find out everything I can about the property. I call it my FBI investigation. And I find out, I go to the MLS, I look up all the information I can in the MLS. I actually Google the property. If it's in Burlington County, I go onto the Burlington County website and I find out who actually owns the property. Very important. You want to make sure who's ever signing that listing agreement is, on the deed. When I speak to the seller, potential seller, I find out all the updates, everything that they've done, how many beds, baths, the roof, septic, sewer, gas, oil, basement, kitchen, is it new? I also drive by the house or the property just to see what the area is like, the condition of the property, getting all the comps. When I sit down with the seller, I talk about solds, actives, expireds. I tell them it's like going to the prom when you're selling your house. You want to make sure that everything's perfect because you're in competition with all these other houses that are for sale, and you want to be number one. And I asked the seller also what they think that their house is worth, what they think the house should be priced at. So I kind of know a little bit about what I'm dealing with. Do they think they have gold buried in the backyard, or are they, reasonable? So that's pretty much it. I also look at like the demand. I look at what's going on with the market. Is there only 3 houses like this, or is this the only house in this price range? All that stuff makes a difference because, if it's desirable and there's not a lot of inventory, then I think you can price it a little higher. So
now, are you doing this, Nancy? You're doing this before you go to the physical walkthrough of the property?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I drive by, to kind of look at the house and see what it looks like from the outside. But I get all the information. So when I sit down with them and interview them, I have all this information to show them and discuss with them.
Now I'm going to ask everybody on the panel this. So Nancy, you get the first one. I didn't dish this out earlier. Do you ask your seller? Do you give a price to your seller at that appointment?
Sometimes I do. I usually give them a range. I mean, if it's pretty clear what the house should sell for, I kind of give them a range of like, it should be between this and this. I also have net sheets with me. I forgot to say that. I also, because I want to give them an idea of, what their bottom line is, what they're going to walk away with it. I also ask them questions about, is there a mortgage, like what their payoff is, all that good stuff. So I can do the net sheet and give them all that information.
Great. Excellent. Same question. You go to a seller, and this is a little different now. We're moving to John, but this is going to be a little different because I know John deals with a lot of bank-owned properties. So please share all your experiences. But what are your first steps process to determining price and or value?
I'll piggyback off of what Nancy said, which is the beginning of just getting all the information on the house. And I try to ask a lot of questions in the beginning just to get as much information. I do like what she said also about asking them what they think it's worth. It just lets you know right off the bat what you're dealing with. But then I just get the information on the neighborhood, the house. I look at the comps obviously first, and just try to get an idea of what they're selling for, who the typical buyer is for the neighborhood, and the typical financing. Is this an area where it's typically FHA, first-time home buyers buying? Is it usually conventional move-up buyers buying? And then I just try to get the information on basically and especially like in this market since March, like I don't look at anything from before March as far as comps go, because it's just been a different world. And just look at the demand in the market and say if there's an over demand, and then look and see what things have been selling for, and what the typical market incline has been. If it's been, because people tend to put their house up, see one sell, put theirs up a little higher, see what that one sells at. That next neighbor puts theirs up a little higher. And then I take that, those expectations and go back to the seller, try to get their expectations and see what they're thinking. And let them know, like, hey, listen, it's been going up here. If they're at it, sometimes in this market, they've been, unrealistic. If they see one went across the street at a high price that they're surprised about, and they think because they got a deck, it's worth $100,000 more. You got to set those expectations. Let them know typically, hey, listen, this is where you're at, and this is what they are. Give them the data, and go over it with them that way. And just kind of try to come up with a price together, but mostly asking questions to get as much information as you can from them, and then just analyzing the data and the typical marketing client in the MLS, and then sharing with them the information about, obviously you got appraisal concerns as well if they get the number they want, which in some cases can happen if there's so much more demand than there is inventory. We've had people come in and overpay for stuff. And then I just try to help them come up with a value that way, give them a range. Again, set the, and then, I put it out in front of them. Hey, this one sold for this one sold for this. If we take into account the marketing climb and we go above it, which is speculative, we can't guarantee you'll get that number. And if we do get that number, we can't guarantee you'll get an appraisal. And we set the expectations and see where they're at. If they're like, well, if I don't get this, which is, whatever, then they're not selling. And, they're not really looking for to sell. They're more looking to hit the jackpot. It doesn't mean you can't. That doesn't mean that can't happen either. But you just got to set expectations, discuss it.
I'm in like a car.
Things like that.
John, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. How different is your approach? And I know a lot of people that it's valuable to have somebody who deals with so many REO properties on this panel. How does your approach differ when you deal with banks?
Well, they're very data driven, very realistic. The one thing that's good with them is it's all numbers, and it's all numbers make sense. The other thing is I have to be right. The biggest thing I can do to screw myself in that scenario is to just underprice it. I got to find that perfect marriage between time on market and value to the comps. It's got to be right in the beginning. It's got to be right when I sell it. Because I'm graded on it, and not by a person, by a computer. So it doesn't matter if they like me or not. If I go in and tell them I think it's worth 150, and I saw that place at 170 in 2 days with multiple bids, which has been a struggle in this market, it counts against me.
That's interesting for people to know that.
Yeah, that's one thing. It's well, the one thing that's good is it does keep me fresh because I constantly got to do broker price opinions, which are like CMAs, but they're more like an appraisal. They're done on appraisal, a uniform commercial code appraisal form. So they're basically using the same form an appraiser uses, and they give me the guidelines to use, just like an appraiser does. A lot of times, people don't understand that the appraisal is they have guidelines from the bank on what they can use and what they can't. They'll say only comps for the neighborhood, for the development. And you might be next to a subdivision that's identical in every way, shape, or form. There might be 4 sales in that one and only 1 in yours. And if that one in your development is, let's say it's a 3-bedroom and you got a 4, 2.5, they're going to look at that comp in there. They're going to want to appraise that house at that value versus one, less than a half mile away in the same development, same town, same schools. So, you got to look at those guidelines, and you got to consider that stuff when you're pricing these things.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Capri.
Okay. So for the past few years, I had been always saying that I hated listings, and I thought I was doing everything right in terms of pricing. I'm like, I would download these big spreadsheets from the MLS and, do price per square foot and just look at all these different angles. And I was constantly pricing my properties wrong. And, but I never changed my ways until actually I learned this from Neil. So I have to give him credit in that, a few years ago, he started adopting where you, after you do the comps, you'll sit down with the seller either in person or over Zoom and go through each comp with them and have them look at and tell you, is your house better than this? Is your house not better than this? So during COVID and even before, because I was either pregnant or just had a baby, I kind of tailored it my way. So what I do now is somebody contacts me, I immediately set up a Zoom with them. And on the Zoom, I will ask them, do all the fact finding, ask them about their property. Sometimes they'll show me either with their, their phone or their computer, show me the condition of the kitchen, the bathrooms, the basement, all that. So I can see what it looks like over online. And I will do the comps in front of them, and I will give them a range of not seeing, and I'll remind them, like, listen, it's not me seeing it in person, that could change, but here's a range. So they see me pull the comps directly in front of them, which is something, and we're both finding out at that moment what the home could possibly sell for. So there's nothing hidden. There's no magical number. I've had appraisers come speak to my team often. So I try to use the skills that appraisers have told us in terms of pricing properties. So I say, like, listen, this is what an appraiser will do. They're only going to go back 6 months, or they're only going to do this, and they're only going to look in this area specifically. So we come up with a range. Then I'll go to the property in person. Now due to COVID, it's a much quicker process of seeing it in person because I've already seen it through Zoom, and I already know the details. Then I go back and I fine tune my comps after I've seen it in person. Maybe it shows better. Maybe it's in worse condition. Maybe the exterior is not how I expected it. So then I'll fine tune the comps. I will put it on, sometimes I'll put it on a spreadsheet. Like, I don't think I can share. I'll share that one of the most recent things that I've done, but like sometimes I'll download some information from the MLS and I'll put it together. I try to get then the client to do another Zoom to go through the comps that I think are most comparable to theirs. If not, I'll attach the spreadsheet that I make as a PDF. So I will show them what the average condition of the properties that are similar to theirs. So that, because I know if you just send them the comps and say, here, go through these, I know they're not going to do it. So either I try to get them to go through it, or I pick out pictures and attach it to my information. Then I think it was Nancy who says she brings the closing costs with her. I do the closing costs in the first consultation with the price range, the ranges of prices, so they can see, what I'm asking for commission. They can see all these things up front, because, if the price range isn't where they want to be, or if my commission isn't where they want to be, then I don't have to risk myself to COVID. I don't have to spend all this time. The first meeting will tell me if I want to work with them or if they want to work with me. So I don't have to waste too much time. So Zoom call, visit, fine tune, and then send the listing documents.
And Capri, Neil was formerly an insurance actuary, correct?
Yes. Well, no, I mean, he might as well have been an actuary because he just like thinks that way. But he wrote policies for commercial vehicles. Good
team. So next I'm going to move over to Tony Iovino.
John, how's it going?
Very good. Good. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on today.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously, everything that everyone's saying right now makes 100%, sense in trying to come up with a price point. But there's two things I think happen at a listing appointment. First, you got to sell yourself. Okay. Spend that first couple of minutes talking about your success, how much business you've done in the area, how you know the area like the back of your hand. Okay. That's going to get them excited about talking about prices. Okay. And everyone does it a different way. I bring my MacBook, I do it online with Bright. We do our net sheets through there. We go through the photos of all the comps. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But I think the most important thing when you're coming up with a price is including them in the discussion that you guys are doing it together. Because if you come in and you just start throwing prices at them, they're going to be like, this guy, well, you might be the third person through the door. Well, this guy said this and that guy said this. Show them the data. That's what appraisers look at, so if you're going through the data, obviously they're going to know where you're going to come in at, as far as price is concerned. But if you include them in on that decision and make very apparent that that's what you're doing, your success rate is going to be really, really high. And in regards to getting listings, I think you should track how much or what percentage of listing appointments you actually convert, you know, because to me personally, if I'm under 98%, I'm doing something wrong, you know? So, you know, I want to be able to go in that appointment knowing that I'm going to get it. Okay, I'm going to come up with a price point that they're comfortable with, and it will sell on the market. You know, I said one of the two things I say, or one of the one things I say every listing appointment is, look, it comes down to two things, guys, on selling houses in this market: price point and how well the home shows. Okay, if the home shows great and it's knocked out, but you're way out of the planet, you know, as far as price goes, we're not going to sell the house. Okay, and you can have a house that's priced really, really well, but when it's marketed online and when people go to the house and it looks terrible, okay, the house isn't going to sell. So you got to come up with those two. It's really a simple equation. Those two things have to match in order for a house to sell. And getting people excited about selling the house, you got to get them on board. You know, walk in with a great attitude. You know, don't act like you have to be in and out of there in 10 minutes. And they get excited. They do.
I'll expand on what you said, Tony, because I have the 3A approach.
Okay.
And the 3A approach is the house has to have, to get top price, top appearance, top affordability for the appearance, like value, and the top access, meaning the more accessible, the more people in. And when you have those three components, I do think you get the best price for the property. But yeah, I love the excitement. Now you can tell Tony brings excitement to everything. So when I go to conferences, I go with him. I'm the one that's bringing us down. He's the one that's bringing us up. So
that's not true. Stop.
All right, so we'll move on now. And finally, we'll hit Bonnie on this question. Bonnie?
So I really think I go back to old school. I go back to what everybody's hit on in a little different way, but it's really location, condition, and demand. And I think
I'm sorry, Bonnie, can you repeat that? You froze a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Look, I said I go back a little bit to old school, to location, condition, and demand. And it's really what everybody's saying, and just in a different twist. And of course, this market's very different because we're on a lot of Zoom and virtual.
Bonnie, you're frozen again.
Uh-oh.
Let me tell her that she's frozen. She may have to.
Hey, John.
Yes.
This is one of the down things about doing Zoom listing meetings. Okay, if this happens, it's not a good sign right out.
The excitement's gone, right?
It's gone.
Sorry, Bonnie.
Obviously, we got to be careful during COVID, but you got to get in front of these people eventually to list their house. They're just not going to do it virtually, in my opinion.
Sorry, Bonnie. You froze again at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. Verizon or Comcast?
Comcast. Hate
That's
it.
what it is. Yeah. No. So summarize that really quick, Bonnie.
So really quick: condition, location, demand. And if you play off of all those things, it's a people business. I agree. I always have my clients involved. I always want to hear what they say. I like them to, before I get there, to write down all their improvements, which has really been helpful, because when you have 3 things written down and you have another house with 23 things that are done, they answer all their own questions to how high on the market they can be listed, or what comparables they have to what their neighbor sold for. So, but really everybody's done a great job in location, condition, and demand.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'm going to summarize some things that were highlights of this. One, I like Nancy's, this is like getting ready for the prom. I thought that was a pretty good analogy. Obviously, most of the panels, if not all, are creating a price range. So if people are going in with a single price versus a price range, maybe you want to adapt to a price range. Capri using Zoom to walk through comps, a little old school. I would do is when somebody said, oh, the house across the street, my house is better than that, I would take them through the house if it was for sale. So I would take them physically through a house or two on occasion as a consumer, just in case against their competition. So I like that idea now with using Zoom. I like the sell yourself, get them excited, talk about pricing, and a lot of it location, condition, demand. And I really think that the whole thing, from what everybody told us, is getting the seller to be in a self-discovery phase. I think that's what it really looks like. It seems like every panelist did that. We're going to move to question 2. Now, from this part on, we're going to have the panelists wave their hands if they want to answer the question. All right. So we're in a market where prices are appreciating. I think it's safe to say this is something that was quite common in Philadelphia, but South Jersey, as a general area, is kind of shocked by the amount of appreciation in such a quick time. So that being said, how do you justify pricing a property that a seller feels should price over comparable sales? All right, we'll go with John.
Oh,
First thing I would ask them, again, asking questions, why do they feel it's worth more than the other one? Sometimes you just throw the ball back in their court, and they'll tell you. And maybe it's something that you overlooked, or maybe it's something that they just overvalue themselves. Sometimes they'll tell you, well, I built this place, with my grandfather and our bare hands, and well, none of that matters. It's obviously not going to add to market value. But if it's something that's that you didn't think of, and they say, all right, well, I got a corner lot. That house is at the stop sign. There's accidents there every year. They'll think, those things like that. You never know. But asking questions will help you figure out what, whether they're just, whether they're off the reservation with their price, or if they're just, if they maybe thought, are thinking of something that you didn't consider. Sometimes it's sometimes depends on there might be something that you're missing, like I said, it's close to the school, or it's, whatever. So it's good sometimes just to ask questions, find out what that is, and then whether you can, what that, and you also got to figure out what that value is. If it is something else, a value that you missed, try to figure out what that is based on data and research.
Great points, John. Anybody else? Nancy, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I think upgrades are really important, and inventory demands. I've taken people out, like I had a customer that thought their house was worth way more than the comps, and I actually put them in my car and took them to other houses similar to theirs, so they could see that, hey, your house is really only worth what these houses are going for. Just because you have marble floors, the next guy might want, something else. That's something that you had the enjoyment of using the marble floors, but the next guy, he's going to want hardwood. So you have to kind of bring them down to reality. And but the upgrades and the demand, I think, is the most important thing.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh, Tony? Oh, Bonnie, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, Bonnie.
Sure. Oh, I think one of the, across the board, I always give them a high and a low when I go in, not their high, but a high and a low. And I show them, and it's proven on mostly all of my listings, that if they go to the lower side of my suggested list price, it'll sell over the higher side of my suggested list price. Because it's all about more for less. The more people that come in, the more showings we get, the more offers we get, and it always winds up selling higher. So when I show them the comps and I show them I've listed this, and the other, and they've listened to go to the low side and wound up over with multiple offers, it really gets them back on track, because I don't take overpriced listings. I don't want them, and I want to be the last guy in. I want to be the guy that sells it, not the guy that just advertises my name. So, and I share that with them.
That's good.
Tony.
This is probably the most important question of the day, because we've been dealing with so much, John. I think there's a couple of things when you're talking about pricing with a client, because the last thing you want to do is say, well, the house ain't worth that. And you sold them on the first part of your listing appointment, selling you, but now you're on the cusp of trying to get that price on what they want. And the last thing you want to do is have a seller said, well, I told you it would sell for that, and then you're embarrassed about it. Okay. So when talking about value, there's two things that I talk about when they want to go significantly higher than when I want to. Again, we talked about price point and how well the home shows. Okay. There's a real important value that we have to make sure that we discuss with our clients, and that's market value. It doesn't matter if we're in the range of what we're listing the house for. The market right now is crazy. Whatever it sells for is going to be the value that the market demands for at that time of point. So if you have multiple people looking at it, obviously you might get in a bidding war, but at the end of the day, it's going to sell for what the market demands at that time. That could change in 30 days. That can change in 3 days. Who knows? Okay. But I think explaining that to your clients, okay, on market value, that eventually it's going to sell for that, is going to calm them down if you go a little lower than what they wanted. And you tell them, well, look, if it's really that hot of a market and your house stands apart from everything else out there, you're going to get above market value. We're right there. Okay. So that calms them down a lot when you're talking about the value of the house. But in regards to taking over price listings, okay, if you're just not quite on the same page there, I'll have them sell a price reduction right there at the listing appointment. All right, look, you want to start at $400,000? Okay, I'm at $475. Or what did I say?
400.
Whatever.
I like your. Can you list my house, by the way?
Yeah. So if they want 400 and I say 375, okay, I say, look, we could try the 400 for 2 weeks. If the house doesn't sell in 2 weeks, especially in this market, okay, that means something's off here. So you're going to give me permission to lower the price now in 2 weeks if we don't have it under contract. And that happens a lot. And
do you put that in the addendum? Do you put an addendum in the listing contract for that to reduce?
I do. The status change form, I do.
Okay. So you're basically getting them to not only say it, but sign off on that at the listing.
They sign off on it because, when you call them in 2 weeks, they're going to say, well, let's give it another 2 weeks.
Exactly.
I want it in writing that they're going to lower that in 2 weeks. So I'm not wasting my time and resources or theirs, get it signed.
Does anybody use, so when pricing above market comps, I should say, I don't want to say value because value is what somebody's willing to pay for it. When pricing above market comps, does anybody use any type of calculator when coming back to people and saying, because I always have an expression that I say, I don't want to outkick our coverage. It's a football term. And if people don't get football, then I'm probably struggling. But the idea with that is, we all see it. The MLS, you can determine how low people are willing to go, the sold price to list price. So you can kind of create a formula in there that says, okay, if homes are typically selling at a 95% mark, then if we believe we are really at the height of the market, we shouldn't go more than 105% over, or we're probably going to be stale. That's kind of a calculator I throw out there to people and say, so maybe I'll adjust 5% above the high if I think it's worthy. I forget who maybe it was Nancy that identified upgrades. I would encourage every agent to put on a luxury. I know Capri has the luxury home designation. I would put everybody's luxury home hat on, because there is a complete difference in pricing. If something has, a custom kitchen is going to be a lot more than your Kenmore Elite appliances.
Right.
A custom kitchen is going to be, are you having, if it's modern, Pog and Paul design cabinetry? There's a whole plethora of things that is in the luxury market that I know a lot of agents struggle with on pricing because they're not accustomed to it. So one thing I would encourage people to do when we're able to actually go to places again, schedule in March, go to the Architectural Digest Home Show up in New York. It's probably the best one to go to, and walk around and go every year and learn everything that's out there in the luxury market, because you may come across it in today's world, and particularly with pricing. Anybody else? I agree with Tony. This is probably the most important question of the day right now. And we'll probably be revisiting this question from everybody else, but pricing above, I guess one thing I would say is don't be afraid to price over. over where you think it should be. I was on the phone with Tony's partner, Ricky, his business partner over at RE/MAX Community, and he's out of Hamilton, right, Tony? He's out of Hamilton, and he said, you know, it was so crazy that every high price he set, they're coming in 10% higher or something like that. And his like developments that he's known for, like, you know, he's known so well. So I think you really have to see the demand, and you kind of have to do the self-discovery. And I like what a lot of the panelists said. I like how John is flipping everything onto the seller to find out everything what they want and what they believe. I think it's an important part of the listing process and pricing. Let's move on to question 3. What types of data and or stats and reports do you provide your buyers? Now we're going to move, it could be for buyers also. It's not just about sellers here, because buyers are kind of bidding on pricing. What kind of data and reports do you provide your clients to determine price? And if you use a price range, what is the typical range and how do you determine that range? Anybody want to take that?
I will.
Okay, Nancy will start this.
Of course. Well, when I sit down with a buyer or a lister, I always kind of give them a copy of the contract and go over everything with them, so they kind of know what they're up against. So when we do sell the house, we've already gone over it, and if they have any questions about that, we talk about it right up front. When I sit down with the listing people, I talk about schools, all the solds, all the actives, all the expireds. I go over all the different information, like the school information. And as far as the low, high end of the spectrum type thing, I do give them a range. And I, like what Bonnie said, it's better to start a little lower, because everybody wants to buy something on sale, right? We usually look at the sales when we buy anything. So I think it's good if they price it a little lower, then they'll get, you know, more people looking at it, and maybe even get more than what they originally wanted. So that's it.
Excellent. Anyone else? John.
My answer to this question would probably be a little controversial.
Uh-oh.
Like meeting with the buyers to go over prices in this market is, I think you're dead in the water. If the buyer looks the house up, which a lot of times they are doing now, a lot of times they're even giving them to us rather than us giving them the listings. You know, they've seen it. It's in their price range. It's in their, you know, they can probably afford it. Obviously, they know if you're pre-approved and all that stuff already. But, you know, as you know, you put in offers, there's already 4 or 5 offers on the house. And I've had agents come to me, like, I price stuff over the comps because of the demand in neighboring towns, the amount of inventory, different things. And I put it on, there's like 5 offers. I'll have an agent call me and say, well, you know, I went over the comps and you'll never get that price. I'm like, meanwhile, all right, so I already don't like you in general, and I already have 4 offers on it. So go ahead. And they'll be like, well, I got to represent my buyer. I'm like, did you talk to your buyer? Even, you know, are you representing the price? I mean, sometimes you're representing them, but you might represent them right out of the house, because I know if I want it and my wife wants me to get it and it's overpriced, I don't give a shit what the price is. You know, it's not about the money all the time. You want to represent me, get me the house. There's there's offers on it. You can go in and start telling me what your idea of the value is when you have no idea. I got 4 offers already. You obviously don't know the market or the comps. So I think like right now, going over pricing with the buyer, it's more important to go over the demand and the market conditions and show them what's been happening and say, hey, listen, if I go in with a low ball on this thing off the bat, and you can see it, you guys all have been there probably with the owners. The owner's like, you know what? Forget those people. They get 3 offers. I like these people. They gave me what I wanted right off the bat. And it won't even matter if they go a counter offer and they say, oh, they come back and say, hey, well, we'll go pay more now. Yeah. And I'll be like, you know what? I like the first people. They came in right with the right number. I was happy with that, and we're good. So you got to be careful when sometimes people are always like, well, I got to represent. It's not always price.
No.
It's not always price. It's their interest. Their interest may be getting the house, and typically people do pay a little more for something they want.
You know, John makes some really good points, I think, in that. One is there is the outlook from a listing agent that has a lot of listings. So I think if you're going to come at a listing agent with for lack of a better word, some arrogance on pricing. And I always tell my client, I'll go to bat as much as you want me to, just understand that the listing agent is the representative of the seller. And if I tick that person off, then I may be ticking the seller off in that, essentially, because that's the communication. It goes from them to the seller. So I agree with a lot of what you say, John. And it's more or less, I 100% agree with when the wife says to push for something, the price is insignificant at that point. As long as we can make the numbers work. Anybody else want to approach this? Capri?
Well, I think that a lot of people are speaking about New Jersey. And so I would like to give some Philly stuff. In Philly right now, like for the most part, it was like very hot. A lot of things were selling. A lot of our clients were moving to the burbs, but still there were people moving into their homes. So for a while, things were moving very quickly and multiple offers, all this. But now that things are starting to calm down, there's still more people that are leaving the city, I think, than maybe moving in or moving around the city, at least in certain price ranges. So we're starting to see inventory accumulation in certain neighborhoods, like Point Breeze is starting, I think, to have a little bit of an inventory accumulation. So some people have touched on it, I think you, John, but the demand is really important for pricing for both for purchase and sale. Right now, it's, if one of my team members asks me about a price, the first thing I look at is how many other listings are for sale in the neighborhood, because you might be priced properly based on the history, but if there's 7 other listings that are exactly like yours, you might have, in order for you to sell in a faster time, you might have to price below market. So that's really important. And then I'll also touch on John. We have a lot of clients that are wanting to move to like Mount Airy, which is just outside of the city, but still within Philadelphia County. And so, I do things differently than even Neil, where like he will check the comps before somebody wants to make an offer on a property. A lot of times my buyers, like, especially in hot markets, I'll be like, listen, you're going to have to pay close to asking if you want this property. I have a really good technique where I feel like I'm almost always able to get a lot during the home inspection, so that it makes up for the fact that maybe they paid more in the beginning than they wanted to. But you just want to get the person in the property. You can look at the comps, but if you want this property, you're going to have to pay the asking price or pay over, or get in quickly, and then I'll try to make it up to them on the back end if I can. But yeah, you're not in the game unless you're in the game, when things are selling for over asking, or if it's a hot neighborhood with high demand and low inventory.
Yeah, I'll expand on one of those things that Capri says. I always tell my buyer something I learned from a colleague of mine when I started in 2001, Bob Ritchie, and he's not even doing it anymore, but he said, I remember sitting with him and said, how do I tell people what to offer, Bob? And he said, it's this simple. Tell them offer as high as you are willing to go. Whereas if somebody else goes $500 more than you, you can go like this and say, I'm done with it. And I use that and it works every time. I tell them it might not get appraised at that. You may have to come up with the difference, but if that's your like conscious way of saying, I put my best foot forward. Expanding on the Philly market, because we're not touching enough with the panel, just Capri, and I'm glad she is. And Philly's like very difficult to judge right now. I agree with Capri. What we're kind of doing, and I like the way she cited the stats. So I'm a believer that you can manipulate statistics, but you can also let statistics help guide you where you're going. It's just what you're looking at. And I stopped looking at stats. I know John says he didn't even go past March, which I would agree. I started looking in Philly just like Capri does. I focus now more on the actives and expireds than I do with pending and sold. So, I don't know if a lot of people talked about, they didn't talk about it this panel, but like expireds are one of the big data polls I do for pricing properties. Sometimes you can learn what not to do rather than just what you're going to price. So And also what I'm finding is I'll pull trends. You saw me post it on the office page a few times. I'll pull a trend that says that's like, okay, I'll look at the average sold price in the last 90 days or 120 days, but now I'm doing 90 days. Then I'll look at the current pending price, and then I'll look at the current active price. And what's interesting is what I've been seeing during COVID in the city is the sold price was higher than the pending price, and the active price was higher than the sold price.
Wow.
Which means everyone's overpricing because they're going back on the 3 comps that sold, but the market now is adjusting to lower prices. So then I would correlate, well, that's got to increase inventory accumulation. So then I do an inventory accumulation statistic, and I'm finding we went from 2 months inventory accumulation to 4 months inventory accumulation, moving up towards 5. And I'll present to the seller saying, look, these are not good trends. We have to be careful of this, because what we don't want is to get in the Old West. You don't want to be in that horseless carriage that's running out of control and trying to chase it. So that's my thoughts on some of those things. Yeah, Tony.
This is awesome stuff. Honestly, this is great stuff. But the biggest thing that we've been seeing this year with price, now Capri might have seen it in the city that's been going on, but is cash out of pocket for these buyers. You know, you're trying to come up with a price for these buyers to put an offer in. Okay. And it works in 2 phases. I mean, this has been the big topic of discussion in my office this year is, you know, because we haven't been used to this vast influx of, you know, houses selling for over appraised value is, you know, are those buyers, do they have that sufficient funds to pay any shortfall between the appraised value and their down payment that they're putting down and closing costs, if that makes sense? You kind of have to prepare them. Look, if you're going to go 30,000 over asking, it's a good chance that you might be bringing 30,000 on top of your down payment and closing costs. Okay. Right. Because I know as a listing agent, okay, if I'm getting multiple offers and I'm getting them saying, well, we're going to waive any kind of, you know, appraisal contingencies, even if it's FHA or VA, I ask them to send over proof of funds that they have that money in the bank if there is a shortfall between the appraisal and the contract price. Okay. And the first person, if anyone barks about that, they're going off to the side. The ones that send that information over to me, I know their buyers are really strong. And I actually tell my buyers that, look, let's submit an offer with proof of funds that you have this additional money, because that's the first thing we're, as listing agents, are afraid of.
Right.
And I think if you tell the sellers that on your appointments, all these things, how you're going to verify, then that even raises the bar of all the things you're doing to win the appointment, showing that you're already conscious of these challenges. In PA, we're fortunate that, and those PA agents on this call, we have a handful, understand this. We're fortunate that we use a form called a buyer's financial statement, where the buyer it's basically like a mini 1003 loan app. And I would love New Jersey to adopt it, because as a listing agent, you can actually, you can just review and see if they have that buying power like Tony's talking about. But I've been seeing that where everyone's sending, and actually, I actually picked I won a bid on a bank-owned property down the shore. And I want to thank John Swartz for walking me through how some of the ways to win this bid, because it was with Mary Jo Potts out of Elfont, and John coached me a little bit on how to get this one. And because she's a bank-owned agent, John is. We did win it, John. But it was 385, and we went 400 out of the gate. And they had multiple offers. We don't know what the offers were, and cash deal. In fact, it's a cash deal where we're selling a condo they have that's under contract. We knew they wouldn't take a contingency, so I had them apply for a mortgage anyway because they own it outright. And now they got it with they have enough money for like 20% down, so we have a mortgage going on it, and I put the mortgage commitment date on the closing date of their condo.
Funny, so 400. So you went 15 over on a short property in the winter in a pandemic, and you feel like you hit the lottery with a cash bid. Well, do help you with that.
Thanks, John. Thanks for bringing. You know what? Take the wind out of my sails. Why don't you?
Oh, wow.
So, but it is all, and these conversations. The reason I like these masterminds is you get. Look, we can all have I can do a momentum pricing boot camp that gives you like how to calculate percentages and all this stuff. But to get an idea for what these people are actually thinking, these listing agents, and some of the top buyer agents is just, to me, it's priceless. And the way that they're willing to share, because not every mastermind, they get full sharing of what they do and how they think. So it is great. Anybody else have anything on talking about data or stats that they use? John.
One thing I would say, do is I set up like in certain areas, like when I do work with buyers in or an area that I like in general, I like to keep an eye on. I'll set up like a little search in Bright, so every day I just see every house that comes up. Like in certain developments, like I did pick the ones that are close to my house, because if anybody calls me within 5 minutes, I can go and run over and shoot over it, and then it just keeps me fresh on the values and what's out there every single day. So if somebody calls, like and now speed and efficiency is just as important as anything else. So when somebody calls you for a listing, whatever, like not only when they're talking, I usually know. When they're saying, oh, well, there's one down the street listed at this, I already know the house. I seen it come up for 2 weeks in my search every single day. I know the price and I know which one they're talking about. It just keeps you fresh on what's out there, what the prices are, what the trends are. And you can see, like, you're seeing every day they're selling, let's say 300, and somebody puts one up at 325. And then if you go the next day and it's pending, it gives you an idea of where it's trending, where it's going off the top of your head. So you don't always have to go just back and research data again.
And I'll just give a tip that doesn't have to do with pricing, but it just what John said made me think of it. One of my team members, what he does when somebody buys a house through him is he sets up that same search John's talking about on an auto search that gets sent to him monthly or quarterly for everybody that buys a house. And then he gives everybody quarterly updates of the range of prices in their house, in their neighborhood. So he does like has everybody they sold a house to on a mini search to give them pricing updates as a stay in touch method, which I thought was pretty clever. All right, so now we're going to move on to our.
John, can I add something really quickly to that?
Please do.
HomeBot. Does anybody use HomeBot? No. It's $25 a month, and I'm partnered with a mortgage person on it, but it emails everybody every month so that they know their current property value, what things have sold for, and they can play around in there, what their current interest rate is, what their current value is, if they want to play around with it. And every time they engage with it, I'm alerted, and then I'll give them a call. Like if they're playing around with it, or if they're checking it multiple times in a month, I'll get updated, and then I can give them a call, because it would appear that they're interested in, the value of their home. And sometimes they'll say, and I don't I back into it, like, how's it going? What's up? And then typically it'll come up. But HomeBot is a really good one that goes every single month. It's fun to play around with. And, I found it to be a good tool.
Oh, thanks, Allie. Good point. So a couple good tips right there for pricing on staying in touch with people after the fact. And let's go to question number 4. How do you price distressed properties? And when I say distressed, it can be physically distressed, which is like a fixer-upper, or economically distressed, which could be a short sale and or REO, which we don't have a ton of right now, but we are anticipating an influx of them. Capri?
In Philly, at least with the clients that myself and my team deal with, we don't, a lot of them don't want to do any work. It's just not something that fits in their time of their life. And so when I'm pricing distressed properties in these areas, the first thing I look at is like and this is physically first, what level of distressed is it? Is it like a super cute grandmom house that people would consider like kitschy and attractive? Is it mortgageable? What kind of work needs to be done? So is it systems? Is it just cosmetic? So that is really important, the type of distress that it is. A lot of times I will get people who are financially distressed because I was referred, and they want a personal referral. They want somebody they can trust, and they probably were done wrong by another realtor. And pricing isn't as, I mean, pricing is always important because you want to try to get them out of that financial distress as much as possible, but just listening and understanding is really important. Neil has one right now with like 4 different sellers, all different personalities from the same family. And it's just a lot of hand-holding and a lot of conversation. And, you know, you really need to, it's not just, they'll price it whatever you think, as long as they think that they can feel like they can trust you.
John, you're
Good
muted.
stuff. Sorry about that. Yeah. Nancy, you were raising your hand.
I seem to get a lot of these. And what I do is, you know, walk through the property and just kind of see the condition. And then I look to see what the highest price would be if that property was all done and fixed up, and base it on that. And I just had a twin in Riverside that I sold, and I was literally the property, the guy, it was a old 82-year-old man. And he said, look, just throw everything out in the house and just sell it. And I ended up selling it. It was a bidding war. It sold for $60,000 and we were asking $59,000. And based on the comps in Riverside for twins for a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, the highest at the time was like $125,000. So it sold for $60,000, and it really needed to be completely gutted, electrical and all kinds of stuff like that. So I kind of, I base it on demand too. It sold really quick. I mean, it was just like one day we were done. And mostly it was investors that were looking at it. And for an investor to buy it, they have to get it low so they could make a profit. So you have to price it in that demand too.
Good. Great. Anybody have anything else? John?
Yeah, I'd say like for like those type of properties, you want to find out what the market demand is again for like who the end purchaser is. There's some areas around here that are driven by investors and first time home buyers. So you'll see like around down South Jersey, so you have like Clementon, Pine Hill, West Berlin. Some of these areas are either cash investors or FHA first time buyers buying, like those two groups. So sometimes you'll have a place where, and there's a number on it. You know, the investors know what it takes to, you know, and I'll just say off the top of my head, let's say it's 50,000. And let's say they're going for they're 200 on the out sale, if the investor fixes it up and flips it, you know, they want to buy them for around 75, put 50 in them, put it on the market, make a profit, pay their agent, pay their transfer tax and other fees, and sell it at 199 quickly. You know, so that tends to drive that as is value. So even though you may have one, so one might be a total mess. And one might have 5-year-old heater AC, newer roof, but it's not brand new. And minor repairs needed, but there's that because of that type of area and the typical buyer for that area being investor driven, they're going to still want to pay that 75 number, not 90 for the used stuff. So you got to explain that sometimes to a seller that's not like an REO or distressed, but like let's say it's an estate, house is in decent shape, but it's outdated. But it's investor driven. It's not the type of area people will go and buy and fix up and live in and just get a bargain. They're not buyers that put 20% down conventional and buy like they would in a better school system, let's say. So in those cases, you might want to talk to your seller if they have the means to update the house to get it more, you know, to get it more in a range for an end user. Because the FHA buyers that I'm seeing anyway, coming from the city, they're buying over here. They don't want to touch anything. They want, I mean, if it doesn't have the new trendy countertops in it, they don't want it. If they don't have those new floors that the dogs can run around without scratching, they're light gray. They literally they'll pay $10,000 more for the house for $3,000 more worth of flooring. So it's just analyzing that and knowing that up front, depending on the area and you know, and then the typical demand.
You know, I see that everybody's talking about, I think this is one of the more interesting pricing scenarios is distressed properties, whether it's economically or physically. And I think a lot of newer agents or agents that don't list a lot will be challenged with some of these things. I tried to simplify it, actually saying a lot of what all of you said. I tell my sellers we have 4 categories of buyers. It's really that simple. And the first category is on the one end of the spectrum is if a house needs a lot of work, as Capri was saying, when you assess it, is your investor. And I tell them that, you know, an investor is going to want to make no less than 15% return, and they're typically 20 to 25% goal on the high end. So you can take Nancy's approach where you come out with like what the sale is all done and figure out what the pricing point should be there. The next level on that end of the spectrum is your owner occupant investor / sweat equity occupant person that wants to get in there in the grandma house and do the work over 2 to 3 years. So that's going to get more money because they don't need that 15 to 25% return. They may want to get, so what's the value on that? I would speculate maybe 5 to 10% sweat equity return on that. And then I tell them the next level is your move-in ready buyer, which is like most 70% of your buyers, where the house is nice. It has finishes that were updated through the previous owner. And then you have your next level above that is your new construction or total rehab that's really done in a high quality. And I tell them these are really your 4 categories, and things can fall anywhere in between, but that's how we kind of price according to those categories. Where are we? And you can eliminate, if it's like 4 quadrants, you can eliminate half of the 4 quadrants based on what that house is. You might be on the investor or sweat equity person, or you're going to be on the great condition or new construction half of that equation. This is my way to simplify it to my sellers who we're targeting. Anybody else have any comments they want to expand on the distressed properties? We didn't talk a lot about economically distressed. I think Capri mentioned some of those. Are people seeing a lot of economically distressed properties right now where people, Tony?
I would say maybe it's a risk analysis actually of their financially distressed issue right now. You know, if they say, I want it out of my life, then they don't care about making 5,000, 10,000, you know, whatever it is. You can say, look, if I could probably get rid of this house tomorrow, if you have like a pocket full of investors like John does. John has an influx of people looking to buy investment properties. You could say, look, I can reach out to a couple of investors. We can unload this, get it off your shoulders. Because the last thing you want to do is give them false hope where they're hanging on the house for 3 or 4 or 5 months and their situation's getting worse and worse and worse. So you do like a risk analysis with them and say, look, I could probably unload this house within 30 days. You don't have to worry about any more payments. You don't have to worry about getting kicked out of the house, whatever. So you really got to be upfront with them and give them, it might sound like a drastic measure, but they might be in a drastic situation where they just want out. And you want to give them that option. You really do.
That was well said. Great. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. Totally different perspective if you walk in on an appointment like that, coming up with a risk analysis of the person's financial situation. And it's like, you know, it's a fire sale. Everything's liquidated. And anybody else, you know, and expanding on that, you might see this coming up. So that's why we're touching on it on this mastermind is, and I'll get to John in a second, is there's a short sale doesn't necessarily always mean the financial issue may be up to date on everything, but it could be a divorce or it could be something along those lines that creates the financial hardship. So have those conversations with people. John.
Just to piggyback on what Tony said, sometimes that scenario, whatever's going on with the property, the potential difference in cost and price of pricing the property could totally be outweighed by whatever their situation is. So they could be losing a lot more on, you know, if their financial situation is getting it worse, it might impede their ability to buy something else or rent down the road. So taking it, you know, a small hit on the price now to sell it fast and get them out of it, if they can foresee what their situation is, if it's going to get worse or improve. Let's say, you know, nowadays there's going to be a lot of difference with people's businesses and changes once this stuff's all over with. They might say, hey, right now, I showed income on my taxes. I made good money, but I'm losing my job in 5 months, and I know that I won't be able to get a mortgage. So maybe, you know, sell it fast now, get it done while I can get approved still before their new taxes are done, and or something like that, or be able to rent because they might have a financial hardship and then start to affect their credit rating, which would affect their ability to rent or buy later. You know, taking a $10,000 or $15,000 hit in equity to be done with it today might be worth it. So it doesn't, you might need to know those type of scenarios and what their objectives are and what they need to, what they need to do might be totally different than just a real estate situation. They could lose, 50 or 100,000 another way rather than just, a small price on the house.
Yeah. Those are excellent points, really. Great points. Anybody else want to dive in on this before we move to the next question? The last one? All right. So so after this question, we're going to go open to anybody else that may have questions for the panel. The last question is, and we'll get everybody's answer that was on the panel from this. We're going to tie in one, community, in your community. What is one tip or advice you would give to agents struggling or challenged with pricing properties? And we will start with Capri.
Well, we already talked about inventory. Like, I think that's number one. So I'll touch on one other thing that we didn't touch on is after you price the property, if you're not getting showings, or even if you are getting showings, there's a place where you can look up comparable properties and the showing requests, how many requests you get before you actually get an offer. All those stats are now available to you. So I was able to, like, with a bat of an eyelash, get a $15,000 price reduction last week because I said, listen, on average, they're like, well, was it because of Thanksgiving that we didn't get a lot of showings? On average, the over Thanksgiving listings like yours got 2.8 showings. And so it was very easy for me to see where we fell compared to other listings by using the showing data that they now provide to us.
Yes, excellent. That's that little icon on your listing when you go into your listing on the MLS. I think it's a listing performance icon. I think that's what it is, everyone, that Capri's talking about. Good point. Same question, Tony.
Okay. I think probably the biggest thing that most people are afraid to do is ask their peers that they surround themselves with. I'm in a little different position. Me and John are in the same position, but I strive to surround myself with people that are really good at what they do and even better at what I do. John is a better agent than me. There's hands down, he's been doing it for a lot longer. He's a stud. Okay. But guess what? I joined the RE/MAX system for a reason. You're surrounded by studs. So guess what? If I have a question or if I have a concern about pricing, I call John, or I walk into his office, which is 2 doors down from me, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because, he lives in Gloucester Township and I live in Williamstown. He might have a little bit better pulse over there. Doesn't mean I can't market the property just as good as John, but he might have a better pulse on it. Me and John talked the other day about a property in Williamstown down in the lakes. He didn't realize how far it was from him, but at the end of the day, I know it like the back of my hand. So if you set up these little networks of professionals that you can feed off of each other, that's only going to benefit you guys down the road, So that's what I would say. I would tell any new agent or any agent that's struggling with adjustments in the market, just to feed off the people you surround yourself with. And in return, you'll do the same thing for them. And that's why we start, even though we're independent contractors and we all work independently on our own, if you surround yourself with good people, that should be one of the things you should strive the most to work with.
And for the record, I think I could speak on behalf of John Swartz. We'll both accept the label as studs, by the way, from Tony. So thank you so much.
I'll give it to you, John. I'll give it to you, bud.
All right. Same question over to John Swartz.
I would say, and thank you for that, Tony. You didn't have to do that. I would say that just knowing your market, again, and just doing your research in your area that you like to sell in every day, checking the MLS, knowing the values, knowing what's happening, knowing roughly how fast things are selling. That's going to help you be able to come up with a value on your own, and trusting your gut, which if you know your market, you'll be able to do that. And you'll be confident doing it. So you can deliver any kind of info and advice to your clients with confidence. Real confidence, and you won't feel, you'll feel comfortable doing that because your gut is probably going to be right based on the fact that you do this full time. You know what you're doing. You're in a RE/MAX system. You're already an established agent that knows your business, and you go on these appointments with some confidence, and that you know your market, and you're probably going to be right most of the time. And it says, if you trust your gut, if you're confident in your knowledge of the market, it's going to be easier to trust your gut and go with your instincts. And when you do that, you'll feel good about it no matter what happens.
Excellent. Same question over to Nancy. One tip or advice you would give everyone?
Relax. That's the first thing I wrote down, relax. And use a range of prices. When you meet with your people, say, look, this is the low, this is the high. This is the high end of the spectrum, this is the low end of the spectrum. If you show that you're relaxed, they're going to feel relaxed. If you're stressed out, they're going to feel your stress. And it's going to flow, and tell them it's based on the market. You're only going to be able to sell the house what the market will bear for, and that's it. So
great advice there. And the final one we're going to have is Bonnie on this one. One tip or advice you would give everyone? Oh, Bonnie, you have to unmute.
Oh God, this internet. Okay. So I said, and now I'm coming up as my daughter. Okay. I think finding out if your clients need to sell, they want to sell, or they're trying the market. I think that's really important. And I think in knowing what their needs are is how important it is for you to price it right. And like Nancy said, not be afraid, like relax, don't be scared you're going to lose the listing, not get the listing. Sometimes you're just the messenger, but you might not be telling them what they want to hear. So I think if you have a rapport with your client and get the real facts of what their situation is, it helps you in having to deal with telling them what the real market value is.
Well, those were great tips that everybody offered everybody out. I'm actually going to compile some of these into some notes and send out a summary. I think everybody handled every question awesome for such a short period of time. We got really good information. I'm going to flip it over to the rest of the community and see if anybody else wants to ask some questions for our panelists. And then you can raise your hand or you can hit the hand wave on Zoom. No? Okay. Ryan Nagel.
Hey, John.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey.
How's it going?
Hey. Good. Thanks, John. And thanks. This has all been really good. Like, I have 4 pages of notes, so I think it's all really good. I have a question. So how do you handle when you kind of, like, essentially when you've maybe been a little bit aggressive in your recommendation for pricing? So I have a house that I think had the seller done the projects that he said he was going to do, and had I spent much more time there than the initial listing appointment and the second follow-up, I probably would have priced it a little bit lower. But the more time I spend there and kind of go through, I'm finding more and more things that it's a little bit rough around the edges and this and that, and it's kind of not showing as well. I've actually had agents call me why do your photos look so good? And I get there and I feel like I'm not in the right house. So I kind of have to eat a little bit of humble pie, I think. And any tips on, how you kind of broach that subject would be helpful. Thanks.
Capri?
Well, I think I learned this from John, but if you can provide as much stats as possible, do the stats, the showing stats, I always tell my agents, if you have a conversation with an agent, any feedback that you get, every single time you get feedback, even if it's not documented, send it over to them, send an email saying, hey, I just had a conversation with the agent. This is what he said. And what we've been doing, instead of I used to love doing brokers opens because the agents were the bad guys in the deal. So now what we've been doing that's been starting to catch some, and you guys might have even, if you're Philly agents, you might have gotten these emails, but basically we do a 5-question Google sheet with and then we offer a gift card to whatever local place the agent wants. But it's basically the same question, roughly the same questions I would ask at a broker's open, essentially, how does the home show? Any improvements needed? What do you think it'll sell for? And then I have it linked to my to the virtual tour and the photos, and I ask agents to go through and give me their feedback. Then Whitney puts it on, like, aesthetically pleasing, downloads the information from Google Sheets and then sends it over. And then, so you share the link for the Google Sheet and everything for agents. So it's like a virtual broker's open. So you can get feedback that way. Post it on the office page and ask us all to give feedback. It doesn't, I don't have to be a New Jersey agent if you want, and just tell me what you want me to write. If you want me to say it's overpriced or it doesn't show well, I'll do that.
Right. Thanks.
Anybody else have anything to expand? Bonnie and then John.
I think, Ryan, it's a really good example of do your homework. And when I go to a house or when I go to a listing, when we used to be able to go in person or even virtually, and you give them suggestions or a list, I follow up and ask them, what ones have you accomplished? What ones? Because I give them two prices. I give them the lower end of the price, or, if we're going to give them a higher price, if these things were completed, this is where I'd price it. If they're not completed, then this is where I would price it. And I think that's a good lesson for you to know, to learn by this one, that he didn't do the things he said he was going to do, which means then it reflects a lower price than being surprised. Well, you said you were going to do it and I took your word for it and, didn't price it accordingly. So, and I would think I would approach it and maybe have a conversation that, maybe you financially can't do these things. I'd still put a nice spin on it, but try to get that reduction.
John?
Ryan, is the seller giving you heat for it and say for it not selling?
No, I mean, our initial fee, we had an open house the first weekend and we had 35 groups come through. It's it's a little bit challenged. The upstairs ceilings are a little bit pitched in a couple of bedrooms. It's not terrible. It's just the more you walk around, his dog chewed on some of the trim around the window. And I told him about that. And there's just little things. I don't think it's, if the little things were fixed, I think it'd be okay. But he is getting a little bit tied to the price. I've talked to him about reductions, and he's like, "Well, what's it going to do?" He doesn't want to reduce 20,000 or 25,000, which I think he should, but he doesn't even want to won't even consider a $5,000 reduction. So
I had one like that before where my sellers were just unrealistic on what their ability was to be able to fix these little things, same thing, a lot of little stuff like that. Dog kicked this. They went and refinished their hardwood floors, which was the most horrendous redo of hardwood floors I ever seen. And it's hard to tell somebody when they did it, they're all proud of it. They're like, oh, wow, look, it looks just like this, like HGTV. It's not. So I would say, whenever you get an abundance of showings and no offers, it's always the house. It's not the price range for the neighborhood. It's always deficiencies in the house. So I would go by with it and say, hey, listen, it's been a while since we talked about originally what I wanted you to do. And not, I want to kind of go through again the house with you and walk through a little instead of the blue masking tape like contractors use, and just stick it on all those things, on all those flaws. And I just ask them what they think, if they were buying a house, what these things would cost to have done professionally, because that's the difference of what the people are going to look at when they make an offer. And use the word professionally, so they don't just go by with a stick of paint and just slap over where the dog ate half the trim up. And then that'll kind of just put it back in their face and say, hey, well, whatever that number is, you got to reduce between where we're priced now and what that is, because you're getting people in the door because it's priced right in the marketplace. There's obviously demand for it. And it's something in this house, these little flaws that all add up. And you can ask anybody, any married couple. It's funny because we'll go to the listings and sometimes the house will have everything and it's 20,000 under and it needs maybe $5,000 of little things. And the wife will be like, no, I'm not interested. And her husband will be like, well, it's only going to take me 2 hours. It'll take me $5,000. I can do this, me and my friends, in a case of beer. And she'll be saying, well, I've been asking you to fix that piece of trim in the back bedroom for 6 years since we've been living together. You're not the guy that does that. So I'm not interested. So sometimes that's what's happening. You're putting yourself out there to people in a neighborhood that want, like I said, people coming from Philly especially who are paying these prices right now, they don't want to touch anything. They don't want to touch those things. So maybe show them the difference in the cost, and reduce that price might actually save him a lot more in the long run, because people will look at it and what it would cost a professional, and then they'll estimate up. So it might only be $10,000 worth of repairs, but they might look at it as a $20,000 price reduction.
Yeah.
So it might be it's an opportunity to teach them, advise them, and maybe even give them a referral to a contractor and make somebody else happy. I'll give you a referral down the road.
Yeah.
Or you can ask if they're open to Zooming with John and letting him tell the reality. The way he says it's hysterical. I think Megan, did you raise your hand?
I did.
Oh.
I'm sorry, did someone else?
No, yeah, we'll go with Megan first, then Nancy. Both of you kind of went up at the same time.
Yeah, Brian, I would say, I mean, if you've had 35 people through just the open house, and then I'm sure you've had a ton of showings on top of that, like that speaks volumes. And I would just explain that, like there's 5 parties that are going to make your final sale price. So obviously you had an opinion and so did your client, but so did the buyers, the agent, and the appraiser. So I think that if at this point, with an awful lot of showings in today's hot market, if you don't have an offer, like it's not a small reduction, it's probably going to be a significant reduction, and you kind of have the data there. So I think you just have to have the conversation and use that.
Okay.
Good points. Nancy?
You could always offer a decorator credit, and in the MLS, and you could always mention that the house is dog friendly, haha, with a little smiley face because the dog chewed on the windowsill, because it is a dog friendly house. But the decorator credit would be good. I've done that in the past where, the carpet looks like it could be replaced or the painting is like god awful. And a couple $1,000 credit makes the wife happy. Hey, I got $2,000 to change the paint or replace the carpet or whatever. And you could just throw that out there. That sometimes helps, because when the woman asks the guy to do the work and he doesn't do it for 6 years, she knows she's going to get that money to have somebody else do it. So that kind of solves the issue.
Got it.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe do some small reductions in price. I think maybe you have to, you already know he's reluctant to. So you got to say, look, we got to do something. And it's not about getting people in now. It's getting people to put offers in. And one of the way to do it is show people that you're willing to move. If you stay steadfast on this price, the perception, which is people's reality, is that you are not dropping at all. So while I prefer to do 5,000 at whatever price point. If it's that 250,000, I like 5,000 increments. Maybe you do, if they're not willing to do that much, you do 2,500 per 2 weeks. Put a schedule out. Say, look, we're going to pepper some reductions here until it's as low as you want to go. Linda?
What is the seller's response to the feedback that you're getting?
The feedback has been a little bit sparse. I've been getting it from some, I've gotten very candid feedback, which I've passed on. And I've been reaching out to all the other agents I've showed it. The feedback has just been somewhat limited. People love, it's kind of a unique house. It's lakefront. It looks out on the lake, has a beautiful view. And it has this separate lot, which is confusing people. We thought it was going to be an added kind of bonus at first, but it's people automatically think, oh, I can subdivide, and then they find out they can't subdivide, or it might be challenging, and it turns them off. So the feedback on the house has been kind of positive from a lot of people, which I've had a little bit of trouble honestly getting a hold of a few people to get the real feedback. But so I'm trying to get people to be come on,
Have you shown him any other houses to take them through, to let them see what people can buy in that price range?
I haven't. That's actually part of the issue is their schedule. She's a nurse and works overnights, and they have 2 young kids, and that's the other challenge is accommodating showings. He's probably turned down 20 showings in the last 3 weeks.
Wow. Where is the house, Ryan?
It's 917 Lakeshore. Bonnie, you actually called me about it. I don't know if you ever ended up showing it.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
You have a lake property. I think you got to focus. One thing is to focus on people that want lake homes.
Yeah. I
think that's your buyer pool. I don't know how it compares to other lake homes. When I'm doing lakefront properties, I think Anthony, I put an offer in on one down in Williamstown. Lakefront properties, waterfront properties have a totally different buyer usually than traditional properties. They want the water. So the goal is then, okay, how does yours measure up to other waterfront properties with pricing? Versus
it's not actually lakefront. It's across the street from Newton Lake.
Okay,
so,
okay.
I use the Lake View. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
To clarify, sorry.
Bonnie, did you have a comment?
No.
Anybody? So hopefully that helps out, Ryan.
Yeah, it does a lot. Thank you.
Some points. Anybody else have any questions they want to pitch to everybody? Well, it looks like hopefully everybody got some great information out of this, and got to see how these listing agents are in action. I just want to thank everybody for attending. We got this done in an hour and a half, and I think we hit content, got a lot of content done. Thank you, Capri. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, John Swartz. Thanks, Nancy, and thank you to Bonnie. And thanks everybody for joining. This is recorded. I'll post it on our YouTube channel for those of you that want to see it again, or tell their team members if you have teams. Any other questions? Otherwise, have a great week. I hope to see a lot of you on our Quizzo holiday event on Monday, which now has a $1,000 cash prize if you didn't see that come out for the winner. So that'll be exciting. And try to wear some ugly sweaters or Christmas pajamas, and have some definitely some spiked drinks. The more drunk people get, the more fun that thing's probably going to be. All right. All right, everyone. Thanks again. Thank you, guys. Thanks,
everyone.
Tony and John. Happy holidays for joining.
See ya.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.